Good afternoon. I'd like to call the Putnam County Board of County Commissioners regular transportation workshop to order for January 25th, 2022. Well, welcome everybody here this afternoon. We'll begin our meeting with the invocation by Commissioner Adamczak and the pledge led by Commissioner Harvey. Please stand if you're able.
Pray with me if you will. Dear Lord, thank you for bringing us all together here. Please allow us to deliberate and to do things in a will that's your will, not ours, not of man, of yours. And please try to help us and guide us in our deliberations to do that. I pray for everyone who's sick or who has children who are sick. There's an accident this morning, and luckily it doesn't look like anyone's majorly injured. I pray for all those that were involved in the accident, that they're healthy and that everything goes well. I pray for our law enforcement, our military, for everyone that serves in this country, no matter how small of an effort they put in or how large, just that you can protect them and put a hedge of protection around them at all times. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Adamczak, and thank you, Commissioner Harvey. Okay, you see our agenda in front of you, Commissioners. We are going to move this around a little bit, and I'm going to move the Commissioner request that I made to have a discussion about biosolids and a presentation. So we're going to move that first. I think you should have public comment first or have the...
No, I'd do that first.
Huh?
I'd do that, biosolids, and then...
Okay, all right. Janet, we'll have discussion. Do y'all want to come make your presentation at this time?
Mr. Chairman, may I, while they're heading?
Yeah, Commissioner Harvey.
Would you like to explain to them the process of where we go from here at this point? You know, right today we're just going to look at what Mr. Kennedy provided, but you might want to explain where we go from here.
If I understand it correctly, we'll hear a presentation from y'all and have some question deliberation. But this will have to go before our Planning and Zoning Department, which I hope somebody explained to y'all. I mentioned it to Ivy earlier today when I spoke with her, but that's the procedure that would go to our Planning and Zoning. They are an appointed board by the county commissioners, some at large and some district specific. It's a volunteer board, but they make recommendations on particular issues such as this, the Land Development Code, Planning and Zoning, Comprehensive Plan, to the Board of County Commissioners. So it would have to go to them and then come back to us. And since this is a change to the Land Development Code, we'd probably have to have a couple of public hearings on this. Rich, is that true? Probably two? Okay, so there's a process after this. This is nothing that we can approve today. We can approve to move it forward to the Planning Commission, okay? Okay, thank you.
My name is Janet Sornberger. I live at 387 Huntington Shortcut Road, Pomona Park, Florida, 32181. I'm here with Don't Poop on Putnam, or the Environmental Coalition of Putnam County, and I have two major requests. One, I would like to thank you for scheduling the workshop. I hope that you received the biosolids rewrite in time. Mr. Patrick Kennedy is going to speak on that. I would just like to be clear that it's a compromise. It is not a solid ban on Class B biosolids. It does not 100% actively shut down the pending application to be voted on February 16th. It is just an effort to add clarity and guidance for future biosolid application sites. There's a distinction between Class A, Class AA, and Class B, and there is a distinction in the different lands where the classifications might be appropriate or might not be appropriate. So I would like to ask that you guys review that, and then I'm hoping that we can schedule a first reading. I was told there would be a first and a second reading, and maybe in the morning and the afternoon. I'm not sure how that goes.
This would, you're talking about on what you proposed.
Yes.
Okay, this would have to go back to the Planning Commission for them to review.
Okay.
Then they would have to have a public meeting on that, just as we would, with questions and answers and public input provided.
Okay,
And then they would make a recommendation, I guess also the planning commission would make a recommendation whether to move this forward to us. So then we would have to have two separate public hearings, and you can't have them, you have to have them two separate times.
yes, I
I
understand.
would think they would both be 5 o'clock certain, so the general public, working public could attend also.
Okay. We also have a concern about the pending application site. I know that was a big question that was brought up last time we spoke is, will this ordinance change affect that or not? And the reality is I just don't know. I do know the aquifer is vulnerable there. I'm doing some research on how that vulnerable aquifer recharge area can be used to protect it both locally and with the state. Ivy emailed you guys this morning a letter that she wrote based on her conversation with the DEP. I know this workshop is for biosolids. I would just like you to give her some time to explain the letter, the reasoning, and I'm hoping that the commissioners are able to sign as the local government asking the Department of Environmental Protection for a 5-year pause on applications that might hurt that aquifer area. Is that okay if she speaks on that specifically?
Yes.
Awesome. Is there any other questions for me while I'm here?
Commissioner Turner?
I have one. I noticed in the ordinance that you proposed it's got to go to the planning commission. I'm just gonna make one small comment because it needs to go through that process before it comes back to us for comments. Putting it in a P2 zoning is the same thing as just putting an absolute moratorium on it, because nobody wants to put biosolids of any type on public lands. P2 is like a school. You're really saying that we want to put biosolids on a playground? I mean, that's what P2 is. So, like I said, I don't really want to get into this, a big discussion today or whatever, but I want you, we need to make some effort. I've made it as public as I can that I'm not for where they're wanting to put it down there. I am not. I wrote a letter. I did everything that I could do to prevent it. But I still believe that there are areas in the county that it wouldn't be a problem, and we've got to be able to deal with our own biosolids if the point comes to that. So anyhow, that's just the only comment I wanted to make today.
Thank you. I think that that's the reason Patrick Kennedy added the separate definition of septage also, was to help make sure that Putnam County could take care of its own waste. And I totally agree that you guys have been so supportive of the issue. And that's why we came today, not just with a rewrite of the local ordinance, but also with a pre-written letter for you guys to sign and send to DEP. Because it's not a moratorium, but it could buy us 5 years of protection for this specific land that is being threatened. Do you guys have any other questions?
Mr. Harvey?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only thing I'm going to say is I like what I've read so far. I do want to look at the water recharge areas for the aquifer out in the west end. It's a lot of recharge areas, and Patrick and I have already kind of had that conversation. I mean, the aquifer and the water is everywhere around Putnam County. Kate Podovich from Keep Putnam Beautiful taught me a long time ago, 30 years ago, that every piece of trash ends up in the waterway in Putnam County. And if you stop and think about it, it does. It really has a tendency to go into Dunn's Creek, Rice Creek. I mean, it goes to the lakes. So I think that my position, although again, I'm against biosolids in the form that this is happening. I do realize we have to take care of our own, but we also need to take care of our water recharge areas for the aquifer. So I've already reached out to Patrick and looked at that, and reached out to Jane West and Lisa Reimerman about that. So, that's going to be one of my big sticking points on that. So, thank you.
So are you, what is your actual request for that change? Because I'm familiar with the aquifer maps have different classifications on
Right.
how much is medium and how much is large.
Yeah, I'm not a scientist, so I can't, I can't address that in that way. I would love to say, well, out in Interlochen, if you look at Grandin, for example, it's 99 feet above sea level, and by the time you get to Rodman Reservoir, it's 19 feet. If you're down at our old hunting camp property, you can punch a pipe in the ground and have a flowing well anytime you want it. So there's certain, so the land is coming down as the aquifer is getting close to it. And I don't know enough to say what I'm trying to get to, other than I don't want biosolids put on property that filters rainwater and things for the aquifer, and I think we got to be very careful about that. So I'm going to reserve myself to answer that question in its totality, only because I don't know enough about it. But I think we got to protect. Well, I know we got to protect our aquifer, because once we run out of water, we're going to run out of water.
Yeah. I think the suggestion that we discussed was more clearly defining what the high aquifer recharge area was. And I think the original motivation in rewriting it was to set higher setbacks from different types of waterways. Just like you said, to make the protecting the water the biggest focus.
Thank you.
Am I
Thank you,
done now?
Mr. Chairman.
Hey, Commissioner Turner?
If while going through this process, could I make a request that we do a capacity study on our East Palaca sewer system? Because one of the options may be here for the sewage just to go straight into there, but the last thing we want to do is start putting so much of that in there that we have to build a new $10 million sewage plant in East Palaca. So, you know, that might be a way to get some of this off the land if we can send it through there. But we still got to have somewhere to put the sludge when it's over, when that's over. So maybe we could, while this is going through the process, we could see if maybe that would be an option and how expensive an option it is.
May I comment on that? To my knowledge, it's not a compatible source or site, because the biosolids from Volusia County include grease trap cleanouts that have not been heated properly, so they're not eligible for dumping in Palaca. Is that a relevant answer to your question?
I think the septic tanks themselves are eligible for sewer systems. I just don't think the grease traps are, so I don't know much about it. I really don't, Janet, but
I
just
think the
wanna
problem
see
is
if
that it's
that's
all
an
mixed
option
up.
from the people who do this for a living.
Yeah,
I wanna find out if that's an option or not to do that.
agreed.
Okay, this is probably a question for Rich. In this process, if we move their suggestions to the planning commission, at what point, because we've discussed as a commission banning outside biosolids of any type from coming into Putnam County, and just allowing where we're dealing with the biosolids that are whatever level that we generate in Putnam County, where would we start that process? Would it be part of what we're talking about today? And go to the planning commission so we could add that into the verbiage?
Well, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I believe if I'm correct, and please, Rich, help me, I think it goes from today, which normally this wouldn't even come to the commission before this was done. The ordinance would go to the planning commission with revisions, and they would make revisions or whatever and recommend it back to us. But because they've taken this route, you know, I think that any appropriate comment such as what you just made, which I'd be on board for sure, that would be included in the comments that go to when Mr. Kennedy turns that into our staff at the planning and zoning staff, then it would go from there with our comments to the planning commission for them to come up with a recommendation to send back to us, and then we could still, after it comes back from them, if they didn't include that, we could still ask them to add that after, if I believe I'm correct.
Okay, correct, Rich? Okay. All right. Well, that, I would think we agree that that would need to be part of it. Okay, go ahead, Janet.
This is obviously a very long process. I feel like if there's an adjective for all of you, it is patient. I am so impressed. If I could please ask that you give strong consideration to signing the letter to the Department of Environmental Protection to buy us the time to protect the aquifer. I would really appreciate if that was something that could be addressed, whether it's if you're asking for legal advice, if you're allowed to sign it, or if you have to vote to sign it. I do have a printed copy, and Ivy did email it to you this morning. It's just an act that seems to be quicker and more immediate to help with the immediate threat.
I think I wrote a letter already and addressed it to them from me personally as a commissioner to that said I was not in favor of the site at all.
I am very thankful to say that all 5 commissioners signed their own individual letter. This is just slightly different. This is saying, I mean, I can read the short part of it if you would like, just to be clear. Would you like me
I
to do
read
that?
it when you sent it.
I think we all read it.
Okay, so this is specifically asking for up to 5 years of no application on any land that could have a vulnerable aquifer. So it's not a moratorium, it's a pause from the Department of Environmental Protection that can only be received or allowed if the local government sends a request for it.
Commissioner Adams, you had a comment?
I guess I was gonna ask Rich is, can the DEP even intercede like that on an application that's in flight?
I have no idea what their authority is.
That seems like it would be, they'd be almost as handcuffed as we are, that's.
Ivy on the phone with them said, hey, what are you doing about our vulnerable aquifer? And they said, you can have your local government send a letter because of this, this, this. So,
Let me ask you a question. That was the DEP?
yes,
Doesn't the DEP issue this permit before it would come to the ZBOA?
that timing
Wouldn't you
is
think in
very
today's world,
confusing.
that the DEP would know what a vulnerable aquifer is and where it is? I'm no rocket scientist. I sell auto parts and rent mini storages. But it's clearly stated in my letter that a stream goes through it, there's a natural spring, the distance between this property and Lake Crescent and the high school, address traffic, noise, smell, everything. But that shocks me that the DEP would say they should be taking, and maybe they're taking this into consideration. You talked to the wrong person, but that's amazing.
Maybe they just want us to ask the right way. Like
Okay.
you guys say, there's due process. I never buy my kids candy at the gas station because they never ask me, but my husband always does. And it sounds like you'd be willing to sign this letter in support of us because it is just going to restate what you've already said in language that the DEP would appreciate more clearly.
Rich, before I call on Commissioner Adams' act, do you want to make a comment, your legal opinion on, you saw the letter. I guess, have you seen the letter?
I did. I was copied on the letter, and I mean, my advice to the commission is they shouldn't sign the letter right now, because understanding that the process is gonna at some point lead through the ZBOA, and if there's an appeal of that, then this commission has to sit in a quasi-judicial capacity to review that decision. In that capacity, they sit here like judges, and because they sit like judges, they're not supposed to prejudge anything that comes before them. So I wouldn't want them to sign a letter that appears that they prejudge the situation before it came before them.
I thought that doesn't come to us. I thought that only goes to, I thought there was no path to get it to us. It
It's
would only
not
go
on
to,
ZBOA.
right, it would only go to it.
If it goes through the planning commission, it can. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
This goes to the.
So you're talking about it
Yeah,
because
the
of the ordinance that they want to do in conjunction with it. I get what you're saying.
Okay, the ordinance is, now the letter addresses a pause, a stay time, correct?
It's sending a letter to express opposition of approval. That's something that each of the commissioners has already done.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not gonna sign this letter. Y'all can do as you please as commissioners, but I'm not gonna sign it, because basically what the letter says is that we want to build in a five-year wait to be able to do any of this stuff. I think we're overreacting for a site that we're very clearly, I don't think a commissioner up here is in favor of putting that thing down there where you're doing it. But we're taking it to the next step and overreacting, in my opinion, of trying to get this done. I mean, we've wrote letters for you, we've done everything we could against that site, because it's definitely not appropriate in my book, for sure. But to take it to the next step, that we're trying to make it where nobody can have one, even if they find a perfect site for 5 years, they got to sit on it for 5 years. I think that's part of what's got to be done in the ordinance, or go through it and let the planning commission review it and do the things that need to be done with recommendations from staff and the planning commission to bring it back to us. And also it would go through legal. You know, it would go through legal, planning commission and staff, and then planning commission, and then back to us, with hopefully people that know what they're doing as well.
I respectfully think that maybe there's a misunderstanding. We submitted the letters from you guys from the municipalities and all the petitions. And DEP said, that's really nice, honey, but that's not good enough. And then we said, is there anything you can do to protect the vulnerable aquifer? And they said, yes, have your commissioners sign this letter. So your letter of opposition is not the same as this. You can ask for something the right way and the wrong way. And DEP said that we asked for it the wrong way, and that if we ask for it this way, it can protect this specific address.
I understand what you want, Janet, I really do, but even if DEP grants this permit, that doesn't mean they get to do it. It's still got to make it through ZBOA, who I think the commissioners have been given the green light to talk to members of the ZBOA outside of here on our own and express our commission or what we feel about it. Now, it's not gonna come before us, but I'll bet you that carries a little weight with the members of the ZBOA when you get to them and tell them, we're not for this at all. We all wrote letters and everything else. So they got more hurdles to climb here than just DEP.
Okay, Commissioner Adams, that?
Yeah, I would sign it only because I support a full-out ban and outside of the active ones that are in the county and throughout the whole county. So I can only speak for myself. Thank you.
Commissioner Harvey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this is a transportation workshop, and I appreciate you bringing it to us. But my goal today was to listen to Patrick about the
I would love for
ordinance
him to speak, yes.
without rehearing all the, don't poop on this land, don't poop on that land. And I appreciate your efforts, don't get me wrong. But I see the blue cards, I see people lined up, and we've got a transportation meeting going on. And again, it's got to go through the Planning Commission. So our chairman has been gracious enough to give some time today for that, and I think that's important to move this forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Paul, one more comment, and then you can bring Patrick up, because we are kind of on a time crunch. So,
Absolutely.
but you've submitted the letter. We'll make a decision as commissioners. I want to talk to legal some more. And we have one commissioner that's not here. So, Paul?
I absolutely want to hear from any citizen anytime that they want to speak at any meeting, regardless of the forum. So anyone that has a blue card, I'd rather you didn't leave. I'd rather you spoke your 3 minutes, because that's your right, and that's our job, is to listen to what you have to say.
I don't
Thank
think
you.
Mr. Chairman
Yeah.
said anything
we're-
other
we're-
than that.
we're
That's
gonna-
just a-
we're
that's
gonna-
just a rude comment,
we're gonna-
Mr. Adams-Act.
Terry,
A rude comment.
come on, guys, that's out of line. We're gonna listen to everybody. Now, everybody's gonna get
Of
3
course.
minutes, and we always have, so.
Of course.
All right, you wanna have Patrick come up, and then I guess Ivy, you
Please.
wanna speak also?
Thank you.
Okay.
Good afternoon. Thank you for giving us all this opportunity. Appreciate you, fitting it in. That is something you didn't have to do, and it is appreciated. I think Janet already hit the high points, and you've seen my cover memo, which also hits the high points of what we're trying to do with this ordinance. So I don't want to go through it ad nauseum. As you say, there's a process that'll handle that. I think what we're trying to do really is provide clarity to the ordinance, which was, it's 17 years ago is when this thing was drafted originally, and there's been no changes to it since. I believe myself and even Mr. Turner might have been involved in the original drafting some form or fashion back in the day. That too was a reaction to septage spreading operation that we weren't aware of that was coming, wanting to open up, and we didn't have a good mechanism to deal with it then. It was an improvement, but 17 years later, it needs work, obviously. If nothing else, definitions need to be updated. I do have answers, and I will present them on the questions you've raised about the P2, also about the out-of-county ban. We'll do our best to kind of present those and let the Planning Commission deliberate as best they can, and so that it comes as well vetted as it can be to you guys. One thing we do need to do is fix the aquifer recharge limitation. The way it currently reads, it prohibits this activity in areas of high recharge, and the ordinance currently says that area of high recharge is 8 inches or higher. Science or no, that's what the code says. But there is a recent comprehensive plan that has a new aquifer recharge map that doesn't follow the old recharge map. It changed the categories, so that's something we are going to need to address. I think what we're going to present to you is an actual inches rather than referring to the map, but we'll provide that basis. I think worst case scenario, we need to keep it at 8 inches, but might even look at trying to present something a little stronger on the recharge capabilities where this type of use would be prohibited. I don't think P2 is going to be as restricted as you believe it will, Commissioner Turner, but I won't get into that today. As you said, we'll address that separately. I think it's the best, and that's only for biosolids B, type B. And I think, which are even more incompatible with ag zoning, more so than P2 zoning when you look at the uses allowed. And that's part of what my memo gets into briefly, but part of what we'll get into in more detail going through the process. I do want to point out, we also are proposing stricter, not stricter penalties, but more decisive penalties. As currently written, it allows for a range. If we make some of the changes we're proposing, if certain findings are made that there's clear detriment to the, I'll just say, high level of harm, then there's some mandatory minimums as far as the penalties that can be applied. And again, I will just cover briefly, without getting into why P2 works, but I would like to cover briefly why ag doesn't work for Class B biosolids. When you
Mr.
look
Chairman.
at, as in my memo,
Mr. Turner?
Yeah, Patrick, I appreciate all this, I really do, but we're gonna hear this again after it goes through planning commission, unless there's something here today that you're asking us to convey to the planning commission that we're heavily for it, like no outside biosolids, which is what we're kind of wanting to do here. I think everybody has commented they were for no outside biosolids, so I'm certainly not trying to cut your presentation short, but if, you know, yeah, maybe I am, I'm
you
sorry.
can do it
but-
without trying.
But we're gonna hear this again after the planning commission, and so
Well, I
well,
think,
I mean, go
I
ahead,
think,
I'll
think
sit
the
here and
proper
listen
zoning-
to you all afternoon,
Okay,
Patrick, ain't no problem,
I'm not
buddy.
going to be much longer, but I think the proper zoning seems to be something that's particularly on your mind.
Yeah,
And when you look at what ag zoning allows, which is residential and even general agriculture, the restrictions on Class B biosolids, even related to general agriculture, are pretty tight, which tells you it's not really compatible with general agriculture even for type B biosolids. So that's why we believe P2 is more appropriate zoning category for that. And not, the Class A and Class AA are more fertilizer approaches. They're closer to fertilizer approaches and make more sense in agricultural zoning. Class B does not. So that's kind of what we want to hit home. And we'll, as you say, take it through the process. There's one thing I would like to address very briefly. I think this is an important issue to you guys, even though it's been kind of brought on by an applicant and a concerned group. I think it's brought to light to everyone that this is a concern for the county. There was a brief statement. I wasn't privy to it, but the planning director indicated that this group might have to pay for an application fee to amend the ordinance. And I would think we'd want to waive that if that's going to be a requirement, because we're doing something to help this county bring their code, 17-year-old code provision, up to date. And we wouldn't want to have to pay, I think it's a pretty steep application fee. So,
Mr. Chairman, I move that they do not have to pay an application fee to move this forward.
Second.
I'll say if not, I'll pay it.
Yeah, whichever.
We got a motion and a
It can't
second.
be that much. We've got a motion and a second to waive the application fee on this particular item. All in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
unless you have questions for me, I'll just leave it there. We are going to try to address the aquifer, the zoning, and the complete ban of outside the best we can. I think that's the three big issues you guys have brought up to us today,
Okay.
unless I missed something.
Commissioner Turner, or excuse me, Commissioner Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Patrick, Mr. Kennedy, thank you for bringing this to us. And in no way we want to restrict anybody's ability to come to us. Again, this is something that, you know, I hate to say we're not proactive because we can't imagine everything that comes to us. And I remember, well, let me just say that, you know, next week's a different fire and the following week's a day. And you've been in county, you've been in government, you understand that
Absolutely.
thought. So when this rose its ugly head to us, surely we want to do something to help the community. We don't want to poop on Putnam. And I do appreciate you being involved in fixing that, sending it to us. I'm looking forward to what the Planning Commission will recommend to us. And, but I do take what the attorney said very very cautiously, because at that point, we are the judge. We're not your county commissioner at that point, even though we are. It's a very fine line, and we have to be very neutral, or the taxpayers are going to pay a big tax bill for defense of attorney costs. So we have to be very, if you think we're not doing something, we are doing something. But we just have to sit in, and you've advised your own boards, I'm sure of that, before in the
Well,
past.
I
So,
just said to one comment, I believe that the ordinance is a legislative, so I don't think there's any, you can prejudge it all you want, to
right.
be honest with you. This is a
Well-
legislative act, not a quasi-judicial act.
Well, thank
but-
you for coming. I appreciate it
but
very
the-
much.
The hearing before the ZBOA is a judicial
Sure.
act, but then you guys don't hear that on appeal, is what I
No,
understand.
they go to court.
Yeah,
So thank you. Thank you, Mr.
All right.
Chairman.
Thank you, Patrick.
thank you.
Okay, Ivy, you want to present something or make some comments?
I brought some copies in case you guys would like to see them. That's what I'm going to go over, and I would prefer if you guys had it in your hand.
I have it on my phone.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, and Ivy, if you state your name and the address for the record.
Ivy Sauls, 210 Oakwood
I have
Avenue.
one sheet, I don't need one, I have it pulled up on my iPad right here.
So I'm just going to follow what Janet was saying. I did have a phone conversation with Mr. Calliman with DEP. He's in charge of the permitting. And I asked him what is being done to protect the aquifer. And a geologist by the name of John Davis sent me a lengthy email back explaining everything that they go through, including the Florida Springs and Aquifer Protection Act, which is where I got this information from. And I'm just going to read this to you really quickly. A local government may apply to the department for a single extension of up to 5 years for any project in an adopted recovery or prevention strategy. The department may grant the extension if the local government provides to the department sufficient evidence that an extension is in the best interest of the public. That is straight from the Florida Springs and Aquifer Protection Act. And it sounds to me as if this is something that you might be able to do, which is why I wanted to present it to you today.
Okay. All right, so I can say we will take this into consideration. Like I said, we have one commissioner not even here to hear this.
Sure.
So we appreciate this. We appreciate your efforts. I think you understand the position of each commissioner, since we've all
Absolutely.
written letters.
Absolutely.
And send them to the DEP, and I believe either spoken to or sent letters to the ZBOA members of how we feel about this. So look forward for this, the final copy to be sent to Planning and Zoning through the Zoning Department, Planning Commission, and back to us so we can work on that. So, okay.
Thank you. I do
Okay.
have one other point. In other similar cases, local governments are losing liability insurance coverage across the country because of claims and settlements resulting from pollution. They are having to pay 4 to 5 times as much for half the coverage. Courts have also held that those invested in the site and future owners could also be liable for cleanup costs. So this would be a great way to remedy that before it even happens. That and save the last bit of clean water that we have on this planet.
Okay. Okay, Abby, thank you. Okay, anything else from your group?
No,
Okay.
thank you for your time.
Okay, all right, we're gonna move down to public comment. So we'll open up for public comment. I'm gonna open it up for either the biosolids or on the agenda items. This portion of the agenda is designed to allow citizens the opportunity to bring matters to the attention of the board. It's not reasonable to expect the board will engage in debate or deliberation on matters that we have no prior knowledge. So if you come to the podium, we'd like you to fill out a card. You don't have to. We'll limit comment to 3 minutes, and if you'll state your name and address for the record. So,
That's for an agenda item.
okay, for agenda item.
Those are- yeah, all biosolids.
Okay, we'll start with the biosolids. Ms. Fowler, Elizabeth Fowler.
Thank you for listening to me. My name's Elizabeth Fowler, 105 Vale Street, Pomona Park. And I'm also on the board of directors for the Como Water Association. And we're right next to Mr. Downs' property. And our aquifer and our water department is going to be affected first. We have 500 people on our line, men, women, and children. And this breaks my heart that we've even let it go this far. It breaks my heart. And I can't stand the thought of this man getting away with this. And I'm so afraid he's going to. And I'm trying to think what I can do to help. And I feel like my hands are tied other than trying to get national news involved with this. And I really hate to see it go that far. But I'm willing to do that if that's what it takes to protect my home and my property and my husband and my grandchildren and the people that live around us. I'm willing to go that far. And I will start with Fort Walton Beach, and I'll go to Tallahassee, and I'll go to Jacksonville, and I'll go all the way down to Key West. And I'll go to the President of the United States if I have to. But I don't want this to happen. And I'm ashamed that y'all let it go this far. I really am. You could have stopped it in the very beginning. You could have. And I'm very upset about this, and I apologize for letting my emotions get to me. But I take this very deeply. I mean, we need that clean water. My husband needs that clean water. Thank you.
Skip Fowler.
My name's Donald Fowler. Everybody calls me Skip, 105 Vale Street, Pomona Park. I feel comfortable enough to say that I echo the thoughts and feelings of the majority of Putnam County residents as evident by the over almost 2,000 petition signatures we have. As far as this particular topic of dumping Class B biosolids, not only on land that's currently in the permitting process, but anywhere in Putnam County. We feel that this process has dragged on long enough. We feel that as this has dragged on for almost a year, when the county council could have handled the problem at the very beginning, every time suggestions or proposals for a temporary moratorium or ordinance change was proposed, at least one of you claimed the possibility of biosolids being used at some point or other in the future. The problem is now. It's not the future. It's now. A temporary stop to this particular permit could have given residents affected by this an opportunity to, from my way of thinking, do the research that all of you should have done at this point. There's no excuse for any of you saying that you don't know anything about this process. Granted, this is my particular personal opinion, but I think everybody here feels pretty much the same way. No one, at least as far as we know, benefits from this application, and I say as far as we know, but Lawrence Downs, and it's financial, and that's all it is. He's not going to be the gentleman farmer, we hope. He's looking to make money from dumping crap on property that's going to affect the rest of Putnam County, the water table, the lakes, streams, and everything else. I don't know what else to say. By signing Ivy's letter, though, you can, as we say in the trade, put up or shut up. This would show that you're serious about ending this, stopping this, or at least temporarily putting a halt to it. It gives us an opportunity for maybe 5 years, a year, whatever, but an opportunity to stop this now. I appreciate your time. This isn't a new situation. Please sign this letter and get this stopped.
Thank you, Ms. Fowler. Next speaker, Ms. Janet Simoneau.
Good morning or good afternoon, and thank you for your time. My name is Janet Simoneau. I live at 140 William Bartram Drive in Crescent City, and I'm part of a LLC, Preserve Putnam LLC, that is also fighting this application process. Our efforts have been primarily focused on the FDEP permit application. We have hired an environmental attorney, a hydrogeologist, and a toxicologist to review the permit application and to review the nutrient management plan. And our hope is to find technical challenges that we could make against the permit application, because a little bit of my background, I worked for the Florida Department of Environmental Protection prior to going into a career with J.M. Family Southeast Toyota Distributors as their environmental and sustainability manager for 35 years. So when I moved to this county, protection of the environment has always been, on my priority list, and I have joined this effort. I don't have what the DEP calls standing. One of the most important things in objecting to a DEP permit application is demonstrating you have standing. And so anyone in this room that wants to get together with me to join our effort, particularly anyone like the Lake Como Association whose water is going to be impacted, we would welcome. I want to just get some things clarified. It seems to me that you're saying that the majority of the decisions rest with the Planning Commission. Unfortunately, the FDEP permit process regarding biosolids is very weak. For example, after they submit their application, the application requires them to document that the land application is going to be, the groundwater table is at least 2 foot below the land application. But after the permit is issued, there is no DEP monitoring required to prove that the groundwater table is still 2 foot below the groundwater surface. The DEP primarily is obligated to monitor nitrogen and phosphorus. And so because the DEP is actually required to issue the permit unless there are technical deficiencies, they have to issue the permit based on the rules they have. And the rules they have for biosolids, unfortunately, are very weak. But a county can enact rules to protect the public interest. So it would be nice, I'd love to see the draft of this ordinance, because in this ordinance, the county can inject things to protect the public interest of the county, like require ongoing monitoring, require the monitoring of pollutants that the DEP cannot monitor, like microbiological pollutants, what they call forever chemicals that are not monitored by this. So the county could have in the ordinance provisions that would make the application process do things that the state does not have the authority to do. So I just want to, again, thank you for your time, and hopefully the county commission, the planning commission will look at ways they can regulate the potential application of this in the county.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay,
can
yeah,
you give her a copy of mine? I can reprint one. Would you like mine?
I would love a copy of that.
yeah, and Ms. Janet, if I heard you correctly, the issue today, one of the issues is the changes in the ordinance and the land development code, so that goes before the planning commission. This application is going to come to the county from the DEP. If they get it, it goes to our zoning board of adjustment. That's who make the final say if they're going to give them a special use permit to apply. So that's why it doesn't come to the commission, it doesn't go to the planning. They're the final say, and they're a 9-member appointed board. They'll make the decision of whether to use, because in agricultural zoning, you have to have a special use permit to apply biosolids. So that's where that would go.
So who is over the biosolids ordinance for Putnam County?
Planning and zoning.
The planning and zoning,
Planning and
Land
zoning.
development.
and then the land development code, and then it would come to us for the final decision. But we don't have the final decision on the application that is active right now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? I thank you. Commissioner Adamsack?
Yeah, so the one other thing, and this is the first time I've seen you at one of the meetings, is my understanding is even if we change the ordinance, it still does not apply to this applicant because their application was in flight prior to the change. So even if we change it to make it bulletproof, whatever you wanted to put in there, it still wouldn't apply to this person.
Absolutely. The DEP, if I had to do an educated guess, is probably going to do an intent to issue the permit. But the county ordinance can require operational processes.
Right,
That-
and there is some of that in the current ordinance,
that-
but we can't change that for that applicant, is my understanding.
Well, I think that could apply to his application process, not to the FDEP permit. But your ordinance can require him to do more monitoring, monitor for certain chemicals. So your county ordinance, even after the permit is issued, could require him to do, and I don't want to use the word burdensome, because that might
So I
sound
guess,
like.
Rich, is that, this is kind of a different subject, really. So if there was an active, someone doing it today, we could change the requirements for monitoring, even if one was existing, couldn't we? Like if there's new chemicals that appeared that people were now risk that it causes cancer or something, could you add chemical ABC to the monitoring for a location after they already exist? I think that's what she's getting at.
That's what I'm saying, that the county
That's
ordinances.
a little different than the question we've asked you in the past.
The county ordinances could be bolstered to say you will monitor the depths of the groundwater table, and if you wanted to say weekly, but I know you have to consider that, because that would probably apply to every biosolids application process in the county. But you could put monitoring, requirements in a county ordinance that required him to monitor the groundwater table weekly to ensure the depth is below 2 foot. Monitor for pharmaceuticals, monitor for microbiological constituents,
This is
monitor for
changes.
forever chemicals. So your ordinance could require all of this
Yeah.
monitoring
So,
of
Yeah,
things.
could-
of-
so my
Okay,
question is only, would any change like that apply to existing applicants and existing people? So they're grandfathered in under the ordinance that they're under?
It's not grandfathered when they
Well, the existing one is.
rules that exist at the time of the application would apply to them.
Right,
I
I
mean-
can't speak to that if you change your county ordinance, would it apply to existing biosolid sites? I'm certainly not a lawyer on that, but,
And you're saying it will not?
but I was saying that
Thank you, Rich.
Okay, all right, we're going to try to make them as strict as possible.
try to make
Okay.
them as strict as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Linda Kreider, then you want to speak now or when we get down to item F? Okay, all right, any other public comment? Okay, I'm going to close the public comment portion, and we'll move down to the public works portion of the workshop. I asked Mike Coxell to come up. We'll start with item A, Public Works roof repair placement for the Ag Center.
Good afternoon, you guys ready?
Yes.
Yeah, this first one is a roof repair or replacement at our Ag Center. Currently, we've seen several leaks in that facility of recent past, and there's some underlying wood damage to the substructure of the roof. And so what we did is we got a planning number together to, not to tear off the old roof, but to put fix the bad spots in the roof, and then put a new metal roof on top of that. And so what we want to do is talk to the commissioners and say, this was not budgeted. This was not a budgeted repair or replacement for the roof, but we're looking between 60 and 70 grand
For a repair?
That would be to put a new metal roof over top of the existing shingle roof.
How much did you, I didn't hear that.
60 to 70,000.
70,000.
Oh, Lee.
But, we just went through, or currently going through renovation of half of that building, and so it needs a new roof.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Mr. Turner?
I think we just need to be sure that we put a synthetic underlayment in between the shingles and the metal, and we use a minimum of a 26 gauge metal on top. And I'm not gonna make any other comments on this. I'm trying to limit my comments because I feel like my children who are in the roofing business may be interested in bidding this project, which means I'm gonna stay out of any, if they do. I don't know if they are, but if they do, then I'm gonna stay out of any voting or anything else on the thing where it won't be perceived as a conflict.
Yeah, I think I had specified 29 gauge roof on that. I've already got the statement of work done. It's ready to go. I just need approval from the board, because this is not a budgeted capital improvement.
Commissioner Harvey?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Where are you going to get this money from?
I have to come from general fund reserves.
Or Better Place or something in that nature, but we didn't budget for it.
No, we did not budget for this roof, no.
We don't typically pay for roofs out of BPP. It would fit most appropriately in general fund reserves.
Okay.
Okay,
Have you
so you
tried
just,
that? Sorry.
you just need approval to, after we get done with questions, move this forward to send it out for bids?
For bid, yes.
Okay, Commissioner Turner?
Have you called a roofer in to ask him about possible repairs? Or are they too far gone? I don't know. I mean,
Yes, we did.
Shingles are too
We
far
did.
gone?
There are several spots in that roof that is leaked over the past years, and now the whole wood underlayment has to be replaced. Actually, they wouldn't do the repairs for us because it's so bad.
Commissioner
yes.
Harvey?
Parts
Yeah.
up there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So basically, you're asking us to go out for bid. We're not making a commitment right now, even though the board would feel probably very strongly about putting a new roof on. I want to see what those bid numbers come in with the specs that one of our Commissioner Turner, I think makes a good point. Even though he's in the roofing business, I value his opinion on that, and I want that opinion. And if he thinks it needs an underlayment with a different gauge, I think then we need to listen to that, put that in our specs, and move that forward. But then I'd like to see what the bids come back for. So we're not making a commitment today other than to go out for bid. Is that my understanding?
No, according to your ordinance, we can't go out to bid without a budgetary commitment. So we have to have some notion that the board is willing to move forward.
Well, I'm willing to move forward with a budgetary commitment based on, and I want to see what the bids are going to come
Sure,
back at.
no, you can do that, as long as we understand you're gonna fund it at the end of the day.
I'm fine with that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, we just need to,
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I make a
Motion on this?
motion that we go, we do a budgetary amendment for or up to $70,000 out of our general fund reserves and go out for bid on a new roof for that.
we've got a proper motion. We got a second?
Second.
Okay, got a second by Commissioner Adamsack.
Under discussion.
Discussion?
Rich, am I allowed to vote for this as a budget item? Because I don't know if they're gonna bid this project or not. Or should I abstain at this point? Because I think the thing says it has to wait until I have to vote on an issue until I actually have the conflict. And there's not a conflict on the budget item. There would just be a conflict if my children decide to bid it later on, then it would be a conflict. Would you agree with that statement?
Yes, it's not a conflict that the roof needs to be replaced.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr.
Okay,
Chairman.
any other discussion? Okay, all in favor indicate saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Item A passes. Item B,
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question, point of clarity? Nilda's not here today.
Correct.
Where's she at?
She's not feeling well. She had
Okay,
she had a
all right, good. Okay, so you're going to handle that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, this is about the MSBU process, the fee schedule, and the process modifications we wanted to make. We talked about this, I think, one of the last workshops ago, about several items here. One of them is the new fee schedule that we will put in place come this next year via the trim notice. So we got to meet those hurdles and do that. And so the first couple pages are what we had presented last time, based on the figures we came with, the current cost that we got for the MSBU's. So that's that first piece. So that's what we need to do. So we get that, I think, trim notices, we need to send that to them by June, I believe, so they can get it in that trim notice, say, hey, this is going to be your new fee assessment for the coming year. The next part of this is have to do with rewriting our ordinances based on input from the commissioners earlier. So that's also attached, and it's just saying, it gives us several options to go through. When we rewrote this, Nilda did all this work. So when we wrote it, we want to capture some of the language that we discussed earlier. So that's what the next couple pages are of this thing.
So basically, if I may, Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Harvey's first.
Oh, I'm
Okay.
sorry, I didn't see his
I'll go
button.
ahead and yield the floor to you, and I'll come back. Thank you.
Thank you. So basically, this has already been reviewed except for the blue part on that meeting that I was ill that day and had to leave early. So, it changed at best I can tell from whatever the percentages used to be to a 50% plus one of the actual people that's turned in a letter. And that if they don't turn in a letter, then it's a non-vote, not a no or a yes vote. It's just a non-vote. And so they have to have 50 plus 1% of the letters turned back in. Is that correct? Is that how am I reading that correctly?
Was
I
our
just want to
intention,
make sure that we're doing this legally, because last time we tried this, Rich said, you can't do that. And so I want to make sure that we've got this worded in such a way that makes him happy. I don't have a problem with doing this at all, as long as it passed legal muster.
I thought we did 50 plus one vote.
Yeah, and that's what I had written down.
Yeah.
50 plus one vote of, 50
Of
plus one
respondents.
vote of the people that turned in.
Respondent.
It's of the respondent. So if you don't turn in one, it's neither a yes or a no vote. So, if you send out 100 of them, 50 plus one of them has got to turn it back in as a yes. Or if 50 of them don't turn one in at all, 26 of them would have to turn one in as a yes and the others a no. Is that correct? So basically, if nobody sends one back in at all but 5 people out of 1,000, and only 5 people send one back in all positive, then we're gonna put in an MSBU for 5 people? I mean, that's not, I'm not trying to, that's what it says now, isn't it? That out of the respondents, everybody else doesn't count at all unless you respond, neither yes or no.
But it would have to make sense. It would have to be, I mean, we wouldn't put it in for 5 people if 50 people lived there and the prices didn't make sense.
But I think I think that's what it's saying that we're going to do, though.
I think we have the option to do it.
Keep in mind,
I'm
that's
not
a-
against this,
Yeah, we
please
have the
don't
no, no, no.
misunderstand, I'm not against it at all, I just want to make sure that we're not doing something that we couldn't do, because basically, if I'm reading this correctly, and it is a little bit complicated, so, but if I'm reading this correctly, it basically says that if a non-respondent, if you send out, no matter how many letters you send out, a non-respondent doesn't count yes or no, either way, doesn't count. So out of the people that actually respond, it's a 50% plus one vote of the people that actually responded for or against, would be either way, 50% plus one vote. So if we can do that, because it may only be 20% of the people that respond.
Could
And
be.
if 20% respond and they respond as a positive, the 20%, then basically we've dropped our percentage from 66% where it is now down to 20%. I mean, if that's what you guys that work them MSBUs for a living like you do, I mean, that are experts at it, then I'm good. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding what we're doing here, which is possibly dropping the percentage down to a very, very low percentage of the people we're going to levy this tax on. So,
May I respond? Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that when you look at that, that's how we get elected. You know, I mean, that's the same process that we get elected at. The wording in here is not correct at 50%, 50 plus 1%. It's really 50% plus one vote. But I think at that point, the board has the ability to weigh, is this a good deal moving forward or not moving forward?
I'm good with that. I just want to make sure that we understand
Yeah.
that's what it says, because that's what
Right.
I think
And
it
that's
says.
what it says.
Okay.
But we don't have to be, our hands don't have to be tied with this artificial number that we're never going to reach. And I think that's, because then we might as well just never have that conversation again. At least now we can have a conversation, we can see what the price looks like, and it might be something where it's so unaffordable, it's just not going to happen at that.
Yeah, the way I read this as well is, if we get that 50 plus one, then we bring it to the board for discussion. If it's less than 50%, then we send a letter to the respondent saying, yeah, you can't apply for another year.
Right.
So that's the way it was intended to read.
Well, I think we didn't want to take away staff time and expenses unless there was some type of idea of moving forward on this project. Because there's a lot of cost could be involved in going forward only to get to that point and you don't hit the 60, you're done. So we got to have a balance here.
Commissioner Adams,
Basically what Mike just said was my understanding, and I just was gonna say that, but he said it, so. Perfect.
Commissioner Turner?
I think there needs to be another step in this if we're gonna drop the percentage down that far. I think that there needs to be a step in there because people usually don't respond thinking that it's gonna be okay. They're gonna raise my taxes $50 a year, $100 a year, but we're gonna get a new road or whatever. And then once they do all the numbers, they go through the process and do all their numbers and find out that it's $483 a month, they go ballistic. And so all of a sudden they become more aware of what was fixing to happen than what they were up front. So I think we should have another point in there somewhere that if, once the numbers have been decided, what it would cost all the residents in that MSBU, there's another public hearing and listen to what those people have to say. Because it's a highly possibility that 20% are gonna get this process started and get this thing moving. Everybody else not gonna pay much attention to it. And then when it comes time to find out they're gonna pay, like the one was out there off of old San Mateo Road, it was, what, 30,000 spread over 10 years, $3,000 a year per lot. And some of them guys own 2 or 3 lots. They just, when they found out the numbers, there wasn't but any of them in there said, whoa, never mind, we don't want it with it, our dirt road's just fine. So we want to make sure that we have that turn-off point, that extra public hearing, whatever the case may be, to allow the citizens the opportunity to come in and say, you know, I didn't pay much attention to this for now, but I thought you was talking about a couple $100 a year. Now that it's $3,000 a year or $5,000 a year for the next 25 years, I am excited now. I don't want MSBU. That dirt road looks just fine, you know, so I think we need to make sure that step is in there, Mr. Chalk, so it allows them, after that we have a public hearing of the shareholders in this, after the estimated per dollar per lot is determined.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Mr. Harvey?
On page 10, item 1, it says a public hearing shall be held by the board for consideration of levying the special assessment at least 30 days prior to each scheduled public hearing, with the description and with the estimated cost at that point. And I'm with you, Commissioner Turner. You know, you don't know what these are going to cost until we get to that point. And then we're going to hear from the people who are going to say, I'm not interested in this one, and they do like their dirt road. Or they might go, you know what? I'm all for it, and let's move ahead. Or there has been some conversation by the board to help incentivize, if you will, MSBU roads with other. So maybe we're at a negotiation point where, you know, it's $1,000 per lot, but if the board pitches in a few $100,000, now that price goes down to $800, financed over a 10-year period. It might be a doable situation.
Yeah, and I'm okay with all that as long as there's an opportunity built in for us to be able to do that. You know, to have a negotiation, or we don't have the money at this time, or whatever the case may be, because some of these smaller subdivisions are all gung-ho on MSBU until the numbers start flying.
Yeah.
I've had several in my area, and it's once they figure out how much it is, that dirt road doesn't look so bad anymore. So anyhow, I just want to make sure there's a process in there somewhere that once this snowball gets rolling and gets bigger as it's going down the hill, that we can stop it somewhere and not just mow them all down.
I agree.
Thank you.
You got a comment before I go to Commissioner Adams?
Yeah, if you don't mind, real quick.
Okay.
To follow up on that, on page 10, number 5 at the very top, it's highlighted in yellow. That's where we could put, when we bring it to the commission, we could come up with the estimated cost for that stuff. We could put that right in there, if that makes sense.
I think the cost needs to be determined at that point for sure.
Okay. Commissioner Adams?
Either way, either in that section 3 Larry was talking about, or 5, I think either way place is a spot to put that. But the thing I like about the way 5 is it basically says we don't vote till after we hear everyone's testimony and everyone's comments. So that part's already in there. The additional part of having all the data would, I think, could be inserted in either 5 or 3.
I guess my point was it's not gonna count if they don't have an estimated number of what they're fixing to be charged. Because nobody will show up if they don't have that information. But as soon as they find out that it's fixing to cost them hundreds of dollars a month or big-time tax bill once a year, they're gonna show up. So they need to have that money available to them before the hearing, in
Correct.
my opinion.
So in that case, I think section 5 makes more sense, because that's at the regular meeting with us before it goes to hearing.
We've got to have numbers included, and then those numbers need to be sent out to whoever is going to be included in the total MSBU. And then if there's nobody shows up to it, good to go, that's rock and roll, so.
Commissioner Harvey?
Yeah, thank you. I like the process modifications. I think we're good on that. Can we just kind of walk back just a little bit on the fee schedule? Because what we're trying to do there is be, I don't want to say revenue neutral, but we want to show the actual cost. And what we've done is we have, over the years, without any type of indexing on MSBU roads, as far as grading roads, not paving. So this is only grading, drainage, and trimming. There was something else.
There's tree trims, there's mowing, there's
Mowing, yes, mowing,
ditch cleaning.
drainage, and grading. So we were trying to show the actual costs there. And what I don't see in here is I don't see the, are we trying to go to a 12-month, like we're bidding out now, where every road's done every month? Or are we still focusing on whatever the committee wants to do? What's our standard, I guess my question is.
The new assessment is based on 12 gradings once a month,
Okay,
4 grass cuttings, and that might have been.
so we're gonna
plus
grade,
reserve.
the new assessment would be based on grading every road regardless whether they've been graded before.
Yes,
correct?
I believe that's what.
Okay,
what
and
this
then
is,
4
yes.
mowings, okay, I'm fine with that. I just want to make sure we have a standard there, because again, it bothers me that they're, and I understand the process, don't get me wrong. Years ago, there's always unintended consequences of every board. They did the right thing, but we didn't index those numbers. And so service levels have fallen off. But the people that are still paying the fee, I kind of equate this to the garbage fee. It would be sad for us to go, well, you live up north and we don't care about picking your garbage. We'll pick yours up once a year instead of every week. I think if you're paying for a product and a service, you should get that product and service. And I feel very strong about that. Whether you live here or whether you just want to come visit your property, you're still paying that fee and you deserve that service. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for clarifying that.
Well, we're ready to move this forward today with these changes.
Would you move it in one motion, or you
Well-
need 2 different motions?
I don't think we need a motion on the second one. The first one, I believe we do, which is the fee schedule, so that we can get everything in time for what we need to
Trim
do.
those.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the fee schedule of the MSBU's going forward as they're listed in our packet.
Second.
We've got a proper motion by Commissioner Harvey, proper second by Commissioner Turner. Commissioner Adams, discussion?
So I guess my question is this, considering that some of them are going up considerably, do we want to have a hearing for those MSBU's as part of that? And, okay. So we would have the hearing for each MSBU, or would it be for all of the MSBU's? How would we handle that? Because there's, you're talking about potentially 10,000 people in our community getting notified of a hearing. And how do we notice that hearing to the public? Just in the newspaper, or do we go back to the MSBU coordinator and push it out that way? What's the proper way to do that?
For a hearing, we could work it several ways, but we can get with the, because they have meetings every month or so, depending on if they show up or not, but we can press it out that way. We can have our MSB coordinator send out letters. We can work through that process easily.
And it's going to be on their tax bill. It's going to be on their trim notice, so they're going to see that, those new rates.
So when does the hearing happen? After the trim notice goes out in June, the initial one? Then you would do the hearing,
So,
or would we try to do that prior to that?
Well, all I know is I went to one of the interlocking MSBU meetings, end of last year, when we started discussing this, and we got the pricing in for the new MSBU's. And so I did talk with that specific MSBU about the new potential cost. I think some of those were actually going down. So, because some of them go down. There's only a few that get raised up by quite a bit, but most of them are either the same, or some of them went down in cost because they maybe have excess funds, or there's enough people there that pay for that.
Okay.
But there's one down on the south side. Of course, anytime we go down to District 1, it does cost more for them to do it. So
The one in the north and one in the south. Those
there are
just
two
astronomical.
that are pricey. So
I guess as long as we're having a hearing, the timing doesn't matter.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Commissioner Harvey?
Under discussion, Mr. Troxel, you mentioned something that I plumb forgot, and I should have written that down. Have we set the reserve level on these MSBU's to kind of match the county? Because you're right, some of them have had a lot of reserves and they're building up, and that's why you're not seeing such a cost. But, you know, are we looking at a reserve based on what the county reserves are, or?
I figured a 15% reserve based on the
Okay,
cost
okay, good.
of that MSBU for those 12 gradings and 4 cuttings.
Okay,
So I
good,
figured a
good.
15% reserve.
I'm good with that.
So I guess how are we gonna notice the public of the hearing, whenever it happens, whether it's June or 3 weeks from now? Are we gonna notice the individuals that are part of the MSBU? Because that seems cost prohibitive a little bit.
Yeah.
What's
There's,
that?
you end up with a newspaper article, or a newspaper advertisement, and then there's mailed notices. There's 2 forms of notice in our own process here.
Okay, so we do have to mail them individually.
Well, we're gonna use our trim notice versus certified mail.
It just says that at least 20 days prior to the date of the hearing, the Public Works Department shall forward a notice of public hearing by first-class mail to the property owners at such address as is known on the tax rolls.
I believe that's for a new one. But I think you're talking for, we're gonna increase the cost for the existing
Rich.
ones, unless it's the same process. That I don't know.
It is the same
It is the same
process.
okay.
Well, that's why we're trying to get, excuse me, you mind?
No, go
That's
ahead.
why we're trying to get rid of that first-class mail and use our trim notice because of the cost of that, because the MSBU's are gonna have to eat that cost too. So
It's true, it would be
trying
a
to
cost to the
avoid,
SBU.
we're trying to avoid that, so we just do the hearing after the trim notices go out. That, just like our budget meetings happen. And they'll get, this is your old rate, this is your new rate, and come to the county commission meeting at that time.
Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, absolutely, I agree with everything Commissioner, I almost called him Chairman Harvey said this morning, just then, but we do need to bear in mind, though, and I know that this is a Mr. Parker question, the Honorable Tim Parker, but his office has control of the trim notice, we do not. So if they do not, or if they decide not to put this new number on the trim notice for whatever reason, we would lose that avenue of opportunity to notify our folks with that notice. So I think
Maybe
that,
we need to make it, if I may, Mr. Chairman, maybe we need to make this as to request that first. Can we go out with the trim notices? And if they say no, then let's go ahead, because I'm with Commissioner Adams, Zach. Everybody needs to know this thing's going up where they don't think we've unjustly given them anything. So even if we've got to spend the money, I think we definitely need to let them know.
Yeah, before I go to Commissioner Harvey, you know, some people just get those trim notices and throw them on the desk, don't look at them real hard.
Well,
And
Well, that's your own fault.
and they may
Mr.
they
Chairman,
may not
that's,
notice that's on there and it's gone up.
I mean, if
that's
it's the
why
will
we're
of the board,
doing-
I'm sorry,
that's why we're doing this such far. We've already met with Mr. Parker's office, and this is the path that he has given us to go ahead and get that on the trim notice. We have to have it done by April,
I think April,
if
May
not
or something like that,
mistaken. And we missed it, remember, we missed it last year because of that. And this is the glide path that he has given us in order to put that on the trim notice. So I can't imagine that he would give us a solution, and
If we vote yes on this, that'll get you on the
Yeah.
way, won't it?
Yes.
Call for question.
well, absolutely. Mr. Chairman, I just want to say one thing. Thank you, Commissioner Harvey. I'll take back all I just said. I should have known that you had already had that conversation, sir, so just thank you.
Okay, we got a proper motion, a proper second. This is to move the new fee schedule forward. All in favor, indicate saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Okay, so on the other one,
We just waive and support.
Waive support for you to,
that's all you need us to do, but we want to move it to 50% plus one
Plus one
vote.
vote.
So what we'll do is we'll finalize that and we'll send it over to legal for their review.
Yeah.
And then we'll
Okay.
present it
Okay.
again. But I wanted to-
But this gets us going with what we did today. This gets us going to where we can move forward, not miss it like last year.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Next
okay?
item.
All right, item C, Public Works, vacate First Street and Interlochen.
Yes, this is a,
Excuse me, before you get started.
I just want to make a declaration. I am personally, Jane is my realtor, so I just want to make that clear. It will not affect the way I vote in this. I do want to just recognize that we do have a working relationship as far as when I look at listings out in Interlochen. She's the one that shows them to me, so,
Okay.
thank you.
I don't believe that'd be a conflict anyhow if you didn't
I just wanted to
monetarily.
make it aware.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I'll try to do the same thing, keep everything in the public.
Okay, Mike?
yes, this is the potential vacate of the First Street in Interlochen. Mr. James D. Palmer has submitted a request to us to vacate a portion of First Street in Interlochen. You guys have the maps there, if you haven't looked at it.
I read it unless y'all need to talk about this. I think it's cut and dried, easy to do. I'm ready to make a motion to vacate.
Chairman, though, I want to make a comment. I did go out there and take a look, and I see no problem in vacating this whatsoever.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to break your thunder or nothing, Mr. Troxel, but I mean, this is a cut and dried one here, easy. This thing should have never had a street at the start.
All right, I make a motion that we vacate this First Street in Interlochen as
Second.
presented.
Okay, we got a proper motion by Commissioner Harvey to move the vacate forward, and a proper second by Commissioner Adamsack. Do I need to have any persons wishing to speak for or against this in the audience?
You just did.
Okay, seeing none. All in favor indicate saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
I would like to say that was a lot of work y'all did to get that street vacated. I looked through that package, said, my goodness. I don't know that I'd have had the wherewithal to know
That's the right
through
thing
all
to do.
that.
Should have never been a street there to begin with. That's all right.
That's what I said.
We find them all over the county like that. Trust me.
Public, all right, item D, County Road Striping and Pavement Marking Project List.
Yes, this is another one.
Move to approve that list.
I second that.
I just wanted to bring to everybody's attention, this is based off what we have budgeted, $60,000. And I can tell you guys right now, that's not nearly enough to get everything we needed to get done, but this was
figured.
based on the worst roads that we could find in the county and $60,000 worth of striping.
Mr. Chairman,
Call for
I
questions.
do want to, under comment real quick. Item 4, I am going to be trying to work on some of that. So if we're successful in Tallahassee, then maybe that number goes away based on, that would be the resurfacing. If we can get that done, that'll be under a different contract. So I'm going to try my best to see if we can't get that project, number 4, taken care of, okay?
Okay, Commissioner Adamsack?
The same thing, if we were going to end up repaving that, it seems like a counterproductive thing to stripe it, then repave it, so.
Well, there are some areas though around Kenwood that people can't see.
But I've
it
gotten several
dark.
complaints about
Yeah.
that particular striping.
Yeah, I know, but
So I know what you're talking about.
let's see if we can't be successful for,
So, but I just want to give this, before it goes out to bid, I want to give the commissioners the list of roads that we have identified. And yeah, number 4 just got added, I believe, to the FDOT 5-year program list, but we're trying to see if we can get that bumped up a little bit. But this was done before we got that information, so.
Call for question.
yep.
Mike, did something change from yesterday? How much of this is in District 1? I know we discussed that.
I believe there's 0 roads in District 1 right now.
Could you say that a little louder?
All the tractors are down there and all the equipment, so
What do you
And I'll make, no, I'll make a comment. I said, there must be some,
The majority of this is
there must be
actually
some
District
bad
5.
roads in the rest of the county, because I got 10 that I want done. So we need to really look at next year raising this to 60 grand. But if you do happen to get some extra funds for 4 or 5, I will gladly take them in District 1,
Or
so.
we can sit in the back of a truck with a roller and a paint bucket and do it ourselves.
That was the question I was gonna ask, actually, is if that road ends up going, we could shift those funds, because
Yeah, we
we're,
can shift them
Yeah, we'll shift them.
in a heartbeat.
Okay. And I would appreciate any consideration for District 1 when we do that. Okay, we got a proper motion and a proper second. All in favor, indicate saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, item E.
I have a comment on the next item before he starts.
Okay.
If you don't
Commissioner
mind,
Harvey?
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Troxel, I am so excited about the location for millings. I know that seems trivial to some people, but since I've been here, the board has been kind of kept out of that loop, and you and I have talked about it, and this board has talked about it. And not that we should be trying to facilitate, but we know our districts, and we know what roads connect to other roads. And to go out into certain areas and find millings were put down that have no purpose in some cases bothered me a lot. Or you find millings that were put down even though you asked them not to be put down, and they got put down. And that's happened to me. I appreciate this. I think that the board, millings are just as important in some cases as dirt to pave. And I think that this is a step in the right direction. I applaud you for that, for bringing that to the board. I do want to say one thing real quick, and Mr. Troxel and I talked last week about this. There are some roads that still need some millings put down in order to make them whole. We've had some requests. What's the road I mentioned the other day to you?
Oak Tree Lane.
Oak Tree Lane out in Francis and Mr. Adams' district. Some millings got put down there, but then the rest of the millings were taken to Old Wolf Bay Road and put down. Well, that road never got really completed. There's still some spots there. So I would ask that you look at some of those roads. I think that's the only road I've heard about in my existence that didn't get completely fixed. If maybe you look at that, fixing that one first before we move on. But I do applaud you, and I appreciate this board stepping up and looking at this too, because this is important for our area. So thank you.
I thought part of the issue on that road he mentioned is, I thought part of it wasn't county maintained. I thought there was because we've talked about that road a few times. I thought there was an interval where they had to stop because the maintenance ends and restarts or something.
I don't think it's that road. There was another road you're talking about, but I don't think it was that one.
Okay.
Of course, I could be.
I'll look back in my notes, but that one just strikes in my head that.
Now, I do want to point out that County Road 309 millings, this was based on milling and resurfacing a large portion of 309. I'm going to have to change that, or I want to change that slightly. I've been with a developer down in that area. He's going to be running a lot of heavy trucks between Old Cisco Dirt Road and the town of Willaca, and I don't want to resurface that area when he's going to be running heavy trucks over there over the next year. So part of the resurfacing will stop at the Old Cisco Road. So I won't have as many millings in that area, so we'll have to kind of adjust what roads are in there. But
Yeah, we talked about yesterday, I'd like to get with you on what you're gonna have and then what roads you think it will do, and then get with you on those roads, so. Commissioner Turner?
I noticed that most of the millings that's from the area in District 3, the stuff in there behind the old highway patrol station in there, all those roads that we're gonna resurface. I noticed that we're just taking those out to 207A and we're stockpiling them on a piece of property we own. Why can't we take some of them and put them like on Power Line Road and put them on, I mean, it's not any further to haul them for sure. And that road needs something pretty bad. It's been terrible since back when we ran the sewer line down that road and we dug up all that gumbo clay out of that hole, and then we put a sewer line in and ran it out to the fire station in East Palaca. And right now, if it rains, you could pull somebody behind you on one of them snowboards with a ski rope, because it's slick. So I was wondering if maybe, we couldn't look at that road and go ahead and find some roads. You know, I know that we're gonna try to get Eagle Nest Court on the pave list for next year if we can, cause it's about a 1 block long road and it's like way away from everything. It takes so much time just to get a grader to it. So maybe, but if we're not gonna be able to get it on there, maybe Eagle Nest Court would be one, but, maybe we could look for some dirt roads there in the area that's in between where you're gonna stockpile them anyhow and go ahead and get those millings spread. I know that you need them from time to time and you need a supply of millings at your yard, but I don't want such a mountain of millings while we need them, you know, while we actually need them on roads in between where we're hauling them to dump them. So maybe, and then we could get the contractor to spread them for us. It's not that much more money, I don't think.
Well, that's the next piece of this, is this will be, when we do the resurfacing contract, it's gonna have, the contractor's gonna be, I want them to be responsible for
100%
replacing them,
agree.
moving them, rolling them. That's gonna be
100%
part
agree.
of, because I don't have the people anymore to do that. And
100% agree.
so that's the next piece. That's why we want this done ahead of time, so when we put it out for bid, this is included in that bid package.
Well, that was one of the biggest steps in the right direction this county's ever done. Used to be, we gave away our millings to the contractor and let them sell them for a profit. And very seldom did they ever give us much money for them at all. They actually made money off of that deal. When we started keeping our millings and putting them on our roads instead of, sometimes we even had to purchase our own millings back from these people where we could use some of them to do repairs. That was crazy. You know, so now we're keeping all our millings, and I agree with you 100%. If we can find roads in the area to put them down on, please, let's go ahead and put them on there and let them spread them at the time. They're not just sitting in a pile somewhere.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, but you are gonna keep some millings so we can repair these roads?
I do
down?
want to keep some. Right now, we have 0. So I do want to keep some in stockpile, but I don't need
Once
a
we
lot.
mill
but-
them, it's hard to grade them, so.
Yeah, I'm okay with that, Mike, and I'm not trying to micromanage your department by any means. I'm just saying that if we have a road in the area that we could put it on, that it would really help, that probably is not gonna be paved for quite some time, and we have enough millings, we might wanna put some of them over there. I think Power Line would be a candidate.
Sure.
Especially from, I think it's Cracker Swamp Road back to the east or the south, I guess it would be. That's where we ran that water line up there, and it gets slick.
Yes.
It gets slick. And there's one driveway there that we actually, I can't remember the people's name, but we actually, if we haven't fixed it yet, lady got stuck there not long ago in the car, and I heard about it. So, and it's used to not before we dug that water line. Now there's a dip and everything's gumbo clay. I'd like to make sure that we take some of them millings and put in her driveway, because we did that to her. It was fine before, it had sand, and then we dug that, and that clay got on there, and they have to be very careful not to drive in the ditch, slide off in the ditch, but they've gotten stuck there. So if we could at least make sure we go to the edge of our right-of-way where we're not working on private property, but to make sure that we get right to the edge of our deal there and repair that driveway that we messed up.
Okay, all right, Commissioner Adamsack?
Yeah, two things. Commissioner Harvey, you said the name of the road. What was the road you mentioned?
Oak Tree Lane, out in
Okay.
Francis.
Because I still think it's one that we went out to, but I may be confusing it with Pine.
Yeah, I don't think it was.
I think I'm
Oak Tree.
confusing it with Pine or something, but that's fine. I want to check that out. But the other question I have, and I was going to bring it up in commissioner comments, but because there is no place where we're doing millings that's near Cousintown Road, but I don't see any scenario where we get to paving all of Cousintown Road in the next 10 years just because of the length of it. But we're going to start from the south end is what we talked about for next dirt to pave potentially. And I just want to, maybe if you and I can get out there again one day, in that middle section coming from like Strickland Road coming up, you got this straightaway, that doesn't make sense, unless we had enough millings to do everything. But where those curves go and it holds that water on the inside of those 3 curves going up towards where we're gonna pave, but we're not getting down that far. I think that may be, it's not the end solution, but it may be a short-term solution for that section of Cousintown, because it's dangerous, to say the least.
Yeah, well, let's take a drive out there and we'll take a look at it. I just want to make sure that it's easily gradable for our folks too. I don't want to have to,
Well, it's where they grade it and it creates a hole.
Right.
Basically on that inside curve, and there's nowhere for you to send the water. So the problem is that whole inside part of the road makes it so when it gets wet, everyone has to go out in the other lane and it's a blind curve. So if you got someone coming around the curve from the right-hand side like they're supposed to be, the person coming from the left, there's trees there, has to go into that lane to go around the curve if it's wet. And it's wet 40% of the time.
Our old hunting camp property.
Right, yeah, it is right near where you're talking about.
Okay, all right, Mike, you gotta work on this a little bit. You gotta adjust the one for District 1, or do we need to vote to move this, to accept this?
but you know, this was more informational purposes. This is what I plan on doing to, where I'm planning on putting the millings. And so what I will do is we'll make that change before we put it out to bid, but,
Good deal. Thank you for the
Okay.
presentation.
Okay, all right, item F. Linda, you wanna make your comment before his presentation or after? Okay, all right, thank you.
This is part of our TAP application for potential for 2024 through 2028. We would like to submit a TAP application to just rehabilitate the existing multi-use trail in East Palaca. It's been down for some time, and what we can do is we can use this money to rehabilitate that section of the trail. A lot of it's asphalt. There's a part of it that's torn up. And so what we want to do is just submit a TAP application to fix that, resurface that trail for the most part.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Harvey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Troxel, how long has that multi-use trail been there? Because I just don't know why it tore up so fast, you know?
It's been here since I got here. I don't know when it was put
there
in, but
before? Yeah, okay.
there's many cracks in the area. And
Well, Linda might know.
anyways, that's we want to let you guys know this is what we would like to submit our TAP application for.
Okay.
I'm fine with
Yeah, we
that.
can get a you need a motion on that?
You need a motion?
Do we need a motion
Yeah.
on that?
Yeah, so let's take a motion, then we'll bring it back.
I make a motion that we accept the TAP agreement as presented to us today.
A proper motion by Commissioner Harvey, proper second by Commissioner Turner. Linda, you want to make this before we vote?
Are you against us doing it?
I don't think it's going to matter because this is going to go through, but
Okay, well, I just wanted to
state your name and
clarify
address
some
for
things.
the.
Yes, my name is Linda Kreider, and I live at 112 Hiawatha Court, East Palaca. And I first wanted to support this TAP application because of its criticalness of connecting the Palaca Lake Butler Trail, comes across the bridge, and then it's the county's trail from there around to Putnam County Boulevard and up where it connects then to the Palaca St. Augustine Trail. So it's a very important connector there, and it has been in a state of disrepair for a while. What I was hoping to see on the on the limits of the project is that it, and I'm not sure on this, Mike, whether it includes the actual intersection of Putnam County Boulevard and the trail. It's a skewed intersection, and it's comes out from 17100 on Putnam County Boulevard, and it angles, and the trail kind of cuts across it at a very strange angle. So it's a difficult crossing for the cyclists, as well as the fact that the people driving aren't sure whether they stop to continue on Putnam County Boulevard, or I don't know. If you've ever gone out there and look where the stop signs are, it's very confusing. And so I would hope that maybe as part of that project, that intersection could be looked at, not only from the trail perspective, but from the road perspective, because it's sort of a dangerous place. But I do support that, and so I'm glad you already passed it. I was hoping in a previous TAP application there had been support for a trail connection on Curry Road. And this, as I talked to you before about, this is a very critical connection on the St. Johns River to the Sea Loop part in Putnam County, because as you know, the trail is marching up the 4-lane. The state DOT is building a trail on the east side of the 4-laning of State Road or Federal Road 17. It's now completed all the way to Dunn's Creek Bridge, underneath the bridge, up over the bridge on the new side, under the bridge, and all the way to where the project stops right now, which is Houdow Ridge Road. That will continue down as a trail all the way to this project as it's 4-laned, all the way to through Crescent City and then south through Volusia to the Springs to Springs Trail in Volusia County. This is part of the 5-county initiative to build the St. Johns River to Sea Loop. And so our part in this is how we connect it onto the trail we have already finished, which is in East Palatka all the way up to our county line, goes through Hastings, and is now being looked at in St. Johns County to continue it into St. Augustine and across from there. So the problem in the gap area for us is where we have already the existing road configuration of 4-lane, which is State Road 100, 20, 17, all those roads together before they start splitting off. That's already been done and in the works. There's really not a very good place to put a trail there. So DOT has been looking at Old San Mateo Road as the alternative for where we would bring the trail from East Palatka at the post office, there, East Palatka Post Office, along McCormick, crossing 17, and then coming on what's called Cannon Road, which you all approved and paved, thank you very much, 2 years ago, and that goes across the little bridge and on Old San Mateo Road. So Curry, a trail along Curry Road, which is just about a mile, is where the trail stops right now abruptly on 17. So if you're driving down 17 and you look, you'll see all of a sudden there's a trail and then it stops right there at Curry Road. So it's a dirt road that goes up to a community center, which I'm not sure if, I think it's San Mateo Community Center there, and the church, and then it crosses 100 there and goes on Old San Mateo. So that was an original project that was put before, and there was some question about whether there was sufficient right-of-way.
Right. Yeah,
there.
Linda, if you could wrap it up.
Okay,
Commissioner Harvey
and
has a-
so
and we'll-
I'm just
we'll move.
hoping that maybe we can go back and look at that and at least submit that. Once again, these are state funds, and they're programmed out 2024 to 28. But if we have that at least in the hopper and we can show that there is significant right-of-way for a trail connection there, I'd like to see maybe that application amended to include that, so that could be considered. We had it in originally, and I'm not sure why it dropped off the radar screen.
Okay, all right. Well, we're going to go ahead and vote on this, but thank you for all your input. Okay, we've got a proper motion, proper second. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, same sign. Okay, item G.
I think we might have got our wires crossed the other day when we discussed this, I thought you guys wanted an update on the St. Johns Avenue drainage project. So that's what we have here. Then after talking to some other commissioners, they were actually looking for the St. Johns Avenue, basically rehabilitation, the repaving.
Resurfacing.
And resurfacing project. So, but I do have some updates for that. So, Mr. Rodriguez got back with the city, it was either yesterday or early this morning, but they have a water line project they're going to relocate part of their water line that's underneath our portion of St. Johns Avenue. And so it's almost ready to go out for bid for the city to relocate that line. And then they anticipate the award to be presented to the city's board February 10th, and construction to commence by March. And then once they complete it, we can begin our resurfacing between Palm and 19th Street. So we don't want to resurface that road until they move that water line. So that's that was kind of
It'd
the
be
update.
stupid to go in there and,
Yeah.
and dig it up, but 2 months later after we resurface it,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, that was the update for the St. John's resurfacing project, so.
Oh, I
Basically, our page is done, it's designed, even, they're gonna reconstruct their portion of that road. We're going to just overlay our portion of the road, but we're not gonna overlay our portion until they finish the water line construction.
Okay. All
Does that
right.
make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
Item H.
Well, this is, what is this one?
Fort Gates Ferry.
Oh, okay, I was in the wrong one here. There we go. The Fort Gates Ferry. Prior to me getting here, the board had approved $50,000 to get this thing going, up and running, right? So to date, we have spent $53,693. Includes new wood. Actually, the landing is, the wood landing is now complete. It's sitting there, it looks great. They did a great job. And so we spent $5,000 to design, $7,000 plus on lumber, and then the contractor to install that for $41,500. So that's, but there's still several more pieces to go to make this thing whole on this side of the river. So what we're talking about is about another $28,000 worth of work.
Will that get,
Yeah.
will that get us to the end? Because you weren't here when all this went on, but I'll help you recap it just a little bit. We actually turned back a grant to DOT because we couldn't do this with that grant, and it was gonna cost, our match was gonna be about $50,000. So they said they could do this for $50,000, and we went that way to save the tax dollars, and we turned the grant back to DOT. So will this $28,000, if we vote to spend it, will it let people float across the river on that barge, or is that the end of it that we know of at this time?
From what, the $3,000 for the PE cert is a hard cost. Got that. The construction of a new metal drop-down gate that's on there, that's 30 days old on metal gate, so I can't know if that price is still good, but that was a hard cost. That was the low of two bids I got for the new metal drop-down gate. It was just slightly less than 10 grand. The labor to install the gate, that was just to manufacture the gate. Labor, I'm estimating 1 to 2 grand. And then asphalt work that's needed. The asphalt ends prior to the new landing. Although I did get a price from another company, they haven't sent it to me yet, a little over 6 grand or so, but we're working through that right now. But I had estimated $8,000 to $10,000 for the asphalt work, and that gets that complete.
And Mike, there are some small repairs that need to be done on the other side. You did say that the actual metal landing, the mechanism that goes down from the wooden landing to the barge, so the cars can transition off and on that side, it's probably 50 to 100 years old.
It's
So
gonna
gonna
need
need to be
replaced.
repaired, but not at this time, but there are some boards that need to be repaired over there, so, you know, I'm thinking, if you think 30, there's a couple thousand on the other side, that will get it done.
Yeah, because there are some boards on the other side that do need to replace,
Right.
and there is a spot that needs welding.
And I don't
on
wanna
the
come
other
back,
side.
I don't wanna have you come back. They don't want you to come back with, hey, we need a couple more $1,000, I'm ready to get this thing done. So, Commissioner Harvey,
I'm ready to make a motion, Mr.
okay?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve up to $32,000 to get this project put to bed and using our general fund reserves for that.
You got a proper motion,
Second.
got a proper second. Any further discussion? Commissioner Adams, that?
That includes the repairs on the other side,
It does.
so I just want to make sure that was clear to you, Mike. I'm good.
Okay, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, same sign.
That works?
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Move,
2-minute break?
yeah, 2-minute and 8-second break. administration, and this is one of the commissioners' requests that we start getting some budget information early. So Julianne has prepared a few pages, so I'll turn it over her for some comments, and we'll open it up for any discussion.
Thank you, Chairman. The commission requested quarterly budget updates, and this is your first quarterly budget update. So your first quarter ended December 31st, and this information is as of December 31st. So with that said, I've said before, budget changes every single day. That does not mean the numbers are accurate today. These were accurate as of December 31st. One of the big things that fluctuates, for instance, I've given you general fund reserves. I've given you reserves for all funds. But at your first meeting in January, you spent $250,000 in general fund reserves. So that's not reflective here because, again, these numbers are as of December 31st. And that's what's dangerous about budget reports is that you have to remember they're at a finite period of time and budget never stops. It continues and continues. So with that, some other caveats, just for those of you who may not deal in governmental accounting a whole lot. We are not a constant. We are going to have budget variances throughout the year, and we expect them and we plan for them. What that means to you all is that in this report, it looks like our revenues are off to a very strong start and that we would end the year over revenue. That's not what's going to happen, okay? We're going to level out. Ad valorem comes in first. That's because everybody pays their property taxes November, December, because they get an early payment discount. It'll trickle in, but it's not going to trickle in at the same pace over the next 12 months. So don't expect to double that over the next quarter. Same thing for expenditures. You see some anomaly in that in some accounts, like operating expenses for the general fund, they're over 25%, which is where we are in the year. Now, for this report only, just so that you guys can visually put a picture with it, I broke out every one of those lines that was over 25% of their expenditure budget. What happens is the same thing that's happening with revenues. Your memberships, your subscriptions, some of those fees that are annual are paid up front. That doesn't mean they're going to be paid all year long, right? That's the whole concept. Also, all the fees associated with the tax collection, the tax collector, that's 1.2 million of those operating expenses. And so, again, I'm not going to get another bill each quarter from her for 1.2 million. That's what we've done already to date. So with that said, I have given you a basic revenue and expenditure report based on the categories that we keep in governmental finance of our revenues and our expenditures, and where they fall as far as the percent of annual budget after Q1. I've given you reserve amounts, so you can see that the general fund reserve as of this time had an estimated $11.9 million. That did take into account for a few pending items that are absolutely been designated by the board. Again, it doesn't take into account anything that you've done since December 31st. The transportation fund.
Julie, have you seen anything since January 1st that would concern you greatly over just normal business on the normal budget?
No, sir. I have no concerns at this time. We expect to be where we are. It doesn't concern me at all. It may be weird for you guys to be seeing this for two reasons. One, this is not typically the way businesses operate, right? If your expenditures were 46% and your revenues were only 30, somebody starts looking at how we cut the budget. But that's not true in government because we're not a constant flow of revenues and expenditures. Also in business, and you have two caveats going. I've said this to Commissioner Pickens because he came to talk to me. You look at financials. This is budget. This is not typically what you would do if you owned a business. But also in what you guys are doing, then you would make planning, but you would have looked at quarter one and you would compare it to quarter one from last year. The AS400 doesn't let me do those types of reports. So if I get them today, I can have them for today. But if we were really trying to forecast, we would go back and look at quarter one for fiscal year 21 and see where we compared. But I can't get that data, not without a lot of manual work, and it's not efficient for anybody. So I have no concerns in any of the funds. Everything that is there is very typical to our business. Capital may have been front-loaded. Capital may be slow in other areas. So the sanitation department, for instance, their expenses are very low, but their capital are very big items, and they're not, the masses of them are not a tangible item he's gonna pay for and have. They're projects, and so those are not things that I expect to be completed within the first quarter of the year. The only capital that the fire department was able to conclude was the purchase of fire trucks, which was actually a carry forward from the prior year. So again, there was nothing in any of this that concerned me. There was nothing in any of this that made me feel that we needed to make immediate action or take U-turns on what we're doing or the plan that we've laid out for fiscal year '22.
Okay. Commissioner Adamczak?
So given that, I understand everything you said, and I really appreciate that you put this together. So next year, Q1, though, we could do a comparison to this. Is there a way you could do it side by side, or does it really not? Because I don't know what this looks like when you looking at your desktop, right? Is it on a spreadsheet? Is it?
It's in a spreadsheet, and we absolutely can. There will be factors
So I think going
that
forward, I
skew it,
think that'll
just
be
like
really
everything.
good. This is really good, and that'll be even better. So I like that, and then maybe keep it rolling for 4 years or whatever, unless if a commission decides to stop doing this at some point. No, I really appreciate this, and I like exactly what you did here with the things that went over 25%. That makes sense to document why they did. And I look forward to the next update.
Okay. Commissioner Harvey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I do want to say that we really need to take your advice into heart, because next year's collections might not be as good as they are, or, you know, they change a lot. So comparing side by side, you might go, oh, something's wrong, but it might not be that wrong. So we need to know that. We're spending money out of our general fund reserves. I guess you'll pause us when it gets a little bit hairy, is what I'm trying to say is.
I would always, as a fiscally officer of the county, I would pause you anytime I had caution in any of your funds that we were going below what I felt was a foundation of what we needed.
Great, thank you. That's the only questions I have, sir.
Okay. Any other questions?
Do we?
Okay.
Sorry.
Commissioner Adamczak?
Yeah. How do we feel? I mean, the whole inflation thing is beating this up a little bit, right? So we've gone out and tried to get more money for projects and things like that. Do we have a grasp on, compared to, I don't know how to even word it, but on how much that has impacted us as far as like a dollar amount? Like, right, because I know we have some specific projects that we ask for more money. Are we keeping track of, as we add more money to projects due to the inflation, not because the project needs something different or something, but because of inflationary things, or we expected a road to be 350 grand, ends up being 420 grand because we just couldn't get a contract to do it cheaper. Is there a way we can keep track of those impacts? Because that does help us as commissioners tell the story back to the people. This is why your government's costing more. And that is a hard story to tell. I mean, it's part of the reason why I asked for this.
Hard to figure too, because you don't know what a lot of times we guess.
Yeah.
Basically guess when we start, and then when you get a bid, it's different, but that's just because we may have guessed too low to start with. I mean, it's really hard to say.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying, though, believe me, I do.
I guess I'm thinking if we keep it to like the state estimate is 400,000 per mile for a road, and if it exceeds an estimate that we think that's reasonable, just to have a gauge. We need some sort of gauge, because.
Or you could go back historically and say, you know, last year a road cost us X amount of dollars, and
Right.
this year it's costing us this, or we had this cost
Multiply it.
this much last year, and now it's I think the liner at the landfill was an example of a pretty big cost-effective.
But I don't know in that particular instance that it wasn't. I don't know if they're still that high or not, or just when we needed it, it was that high, because, you know, it was right behind that ice storm in Texas, and all the rosins used to make that liner all of a sudden went up skyrocket. But at some point, they could come back down to not maybe what they were before, but we couldn't wait. We needed the landfill line, or we were gonna run out of space if we'd have waited a year and hoped that came back down. So we had to proceed, and we didn't really have an option. So I don't know if you can count those burps from a freeze or things, because they'll usually trickle themselves back down to a lower level, not maybe where they were, but a lower level. I'm seeing that in the industry right now, and a lot of things that I'm seeing is what they're short on today. Let's say there was 5 items in a certain industry, they're short on one of them. So they take those people and they, from the other 4, and they go and they start making that one. They're not short on it, but the one they took the people from them other 4, within a few weeks, they're short on them 4 items too. So that's kind of what I'm seeing in different industries in the construction business, and I don't think it relates much different than what we're talking about here. What might be over today may not be so much over next week or next month.
And maybe then in those instances, like that one's a burp because of the weather, maybe just put a note next to it. We believe it's because of the weather.
So Commissioner, to directly answer your question, it's not gonna be, I wouldn't be confident in giving you a report that showed that as it being accurate. There are so many variables that lead to projects being over cost. If you want to know what inflation's doing, we need to just use a CPI index and determine what that is. It would be inaccurate and maybe even further than that to purport to our citizens that all of these projects are over budget and it's because of inflation, because I can't make that promise to you, and nor should I recommend you make that statement to your citizens.
Yeah, and I guess by inflation, I get what you're saying.
And we only,
Outside influences, I guess, is more generalistically.
we only really hear about the ones that go bad too. We don't really hear about out of the 20 of them that we do, and there's 18 of them that come in at or under budget,
Right.
or we don't hear about them. We hear about the one that went crap. That's the one we hear about. You know, the one
It'd be
that,
good to know
like
about the
the
ones that
Eisenhower
come in under
Bridge.
too.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a good story to tell.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, any other questions? Okay, thank you, Julianne, for that information. I'm sure she's available if you look and dissect it more and have some more questions. Just set up a meeting with the Julianne and Administrator Suggs. Okay, we'll move down to Commissioner comments. Commissioner Harvey?
I have none.
Okay, Commissioner Adamsack?
I'm all set.
Commissioner Turner?
I'm good.
And I'm good also. County Attorney? Okay, and County Administrator?
I am good, sir.
Okay. All right, any further business to come before this? Oh, if I need to do that, I forgot. Need to make that larger, I think. Or extend my page, extendo page. All right, we'll open up public comment on miscellaneous items. Any individual wishing to make public comment on miscellaneous items? Okay, seeing none, we'll close that portion. I'm going to try to get y'all out before 4 o'clock, but this is about the best I can do. See y'all in Tallahassee, yeah. This meeting's adjourned.
You want me to give a speech about something?